I never thought silence could feel so heavy. The kind that lingers between two people who used to laugh at anything, who once filled every corner of their apartment with music, with jokes, with plans that stretched far beyond tomorrow. It was late October in Chicago, and the wind outside carried the kind of chill that seeped through the cracks in the window frame. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the way the city lights bounced off the glass buildings downtown. Our apartment sat on the 14th floor, just high enough to hear the hum of traffic without drowning in it. I loved that sound. It made me feel connected, like I wasn't floating in my own world. But that night, the sound did nothing. "Are you going to eat?" Rachel asked from the living room. Her voice carried in that familiar mix of warmth and distraction. She was scrolling through her phone, legs tucked under the blanket I bought her last Christmas. The deep blue one with white patterns she said reminded her of snowflakes. She didn't even look up as she spoke. "I'm not that hungry," I said. It wasn't true. I was starving. But the knot in my stomach had been tightening for weeks now, and food only seemed to get stuck there. Rachel was 29. Bright, sharp, and, in my eyes, the kind of beautiful you didn't grow used to, even after 6 years together. She had short chestnut hair that brushed her shoulders, and eyes so alive they seemed to change color depending on her mood, green when she was teasing, gray when she was upset, and brown in the quiet in-betweens. I used to know her moods like I knew the skyline. Lately, though, it was like watching clouds shift too fast to follow. She laughed at something on her phone. A quick, careless laugh. Not the kind she gave me anymore. That was when the thought crossed my mind again, the thought I hated, the one I buried and dug up 10 times a day. She's hiding something. The first time I noticed it was 2 months ago. She came home late from work, saying she'd had drinks with her coworkers. That was nothing unusual. She worked in marketing, and networking was practically written into her job description. But when she told me the story, she avoided eye contact. Not in a guilty way, more like in a rehearsed way, as if she had practiced it on the train ride home. I brushed it off. Everyone has off days. Then it happened again. And again. I told myself I was paranoid. My father used to say suspicion could ruin a man quicker than betrayal itself. I never really understood what he meant until now. The air smelled faintly of the garlic pasta I made, untouched on the counter. I wanted her to notice it. To say something like she used to, "You always make too much pasta, Alex." Instead, she kept her eyes glued to her phone. "Who are you texting?" I asked, more sharply than I intended. Her head lifted, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Just Emily. She's having a rough night." Emily. Her best friend since college. Safe territory. Except something in the way Rachel answered made my chest tighten. I nodded and pretended not to care. But I noticed the way her thumb moved quickly over the screen, the way she tilted the phone away from me. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the silence pressed harder. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The next morning began the way most mornings did, with the alarm clock slicing through the quiet at 6:30 a.m. Rachel groaned, buried her head under the pillow, and I reached over to silence the ringing. 5 more minutes, she mumbled, her voice muffled. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my eyes. Outside, the Chicago sky was painted in pale gray, the kind that promised either rain or just another dull autumn day. I'd grown used to this city mood, but lately, the gloom seemed to follow me inside too. Rachel finally sat up, running a hand through her hair. She looked tired. The kind of tired makeup couldn't hide. Yet she still managed that half smile, the one that once made me forget everything else. But I couldn't stop myself from noticing the other things. The way she immediately reached for her phone. The way her face lit up for half a second when she saw a notification flash across the screen, then dimmed when she realized I was watching. "You're up early," I said. She shrugged. "Busy day ahead." I've got a client meeting at 9. Do you want me to drop you off? I offered, even though it meant leaving for work earlier than usual. Her hesitation lasted less than a second, but I caught it. No, it's fine. I'll take the train. You don't need to go out of your way. I tried to smile, but something inside me stung. It wasn't the words, it was the way she said them, like she was guarding her space. At work, I drove my armored truck route like always. Banks, retail stores, small businesses. The city blurred by in shades of steel and glass, people rushing with coffee cups, taxis honking, sirens wailing somewhere far off. Chicago had its own rhythm, part chaos, part routine. My partner, Jordan, noticed I was quieter than usual. "You good, man?" he asked as we unloaded bags of cash into the bank vault. "Yeah," I said, forcing a grin. "Just didn't sleep much." He didn't push. But I could feel his eyes on me during the drive, like he knew there was more. The truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about Rachel. About the way she avoided my gaze. About how her laughter had changed, softer, but not for me. That night, when I got home, she was already there. Dinner was on the stove, stir-fried vegetables and rice. She was humming to herself, moving lightly between the counter and the sink. For a moment, I thought I was being paranoid. This was Rachel. My Rachel. The girl who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen with me at midnight, the one who cried at sad movies, the one who once called me her safe place. I walked over, kissed the top of her head, and inhaled the familiar scent of her shampoo, lavender and something sweet. For a second, I believed everything was okay. But then her phone buzzed on the counter. She froze. Not a big freeze. Just a second too long before she reached for it. She picked it up, turned it face down, and smiled. "So, how was your day?" The smile was perfect. Too perfect. I told her about the route, about Jordan nearly dropping a stack of bills, about the traffic on Michigan Avenue. She laughed at the right moments, asked the right questions. But the whole time, her hand lingered near the phone, fingers tapping lightly as if it might vibrate again. When I went to the bedroom to change, I heard it buzz once more. And that was when something in me shifted. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rachel's breathing was steady beside me, her back turned. The city lights spilled faintly through the blinds, casting stripes across the wall. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's Emily. Maybe I'm losing my mind. But another thought cut through louder: what if it's not? That was when I decided I needed to know. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Soon. Because the silence between us was no longer silence. It was a lie, waiting to be uncovered. 2 days later, the city woke to rain. Not the kind that washed everything clean, but the kind that blurred the streets into rivers of gray. I stood at the window with a mug of black coffee, watching drops race each other down the glass. Rachel was behind me, zipping up her coat. "You're leaving early," I said. She paused. "Yeah, meeting ranched up. We've got a new campaign to pitch, and my boss wants me in by 8. Her voice was even, but I caught that flicker again, the small pause before answering. I set the mug down. "Want me to drive you?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, the train's fine. Traffic's awful in this weather anyway." I forced a smile, but my gut twisted. After she left, I sat at the table staring at the crumbs from our half-eaten breakfast. The rain tapped against the glass, steady, insistent, like a reminder. Jordan's words from the other day echoed in my head: "You good, man?" No. I wasn't. For weeks, I'd been swallowing my doubts, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. But now, I needed proof. Not guesses. Not gut feelings. Proof. At lunch break, I did something I never thought I'd do: I called Emily. Rachel's best friend, her confidant, the one she swore she told everything. "Hey, Alex." Emily's voice was bright, cheerful. "What's up?" I hesitated. My heart hammered. "Just wanted to check in. Rachel said you weren't doing great the other night. Everything okay?" There was silence on the line. Then a soft laugh. "What are you talking about?" I froze. "She said you texted her, that you were having a rough night." Another pause. Then Emily sighed. "No, I haven't texted her in over a week. Work's been insane." My stomach dropped. We talked a bit more, small polite things, but I barely heard her. When I hung up, my hand trembled. She lied. Rachel lied. That evening, Rachel came home with wet hair, cheeks flushed from the cold. She looked beautiful in the way people do when they don't know someone is watching them. She kissed me on the cheek, slipped off her coat, and asked how my day was. I told her about the rain, about a customer who nearly dropped a deposit bag in a puddle. She laughed, and for a moment, I almost forgot. But then I remembered Emily's voice. "What are you talking about?" And I knew. Something was happening. Something she didn't want me to see. That night, when she fell asleep, I lay awake again. The rain had stopped, but the streets below still gleamed wet under the streetlights. I turned my head toward Rachel, her face peaceful, her lips slightly parted. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the first crack had opened. And once you see a crack, you can't stop looking for the whole wall to fall. Saturday mornings used to be ours. We'd linger in bed too long, fight over whose turn it was to make coffee, then wander down the street to the farmer's market where Rachel always bought flowers she never remembered to water. It was our rhythm, simple, ordinary, ours. But that Saturday felt different. She was already dressed when I woke. Hair styled, makeup light but careful. Not the lazy weekend look I loved, the one with sweatpants and her messy bun. "Going somewhere?" I asked, squinting against the pale sunlight filtering through the blinds. "Brunch with Emily," she said casually, slipping on her earrings. The words should have been harmless. But after my call with Emily 2 days earlier, they hit me like a stone. I sat up. "Brunch? With Emily?" "Yeah," she said, smiling at her reflection in the mirror. "She texted me last night." Her voice was smooth, easy. Too easy. I forced a nod. "Tell her I said hi." "Of course." She kissed my cheek lightly, like a stranger in a hurry, and left. The door clicked shut. I sat in silence, the apartment suddenly too big, too quiet. By noon, I couldn't sit still anymore. I walked through the living room, noticing little things I'd ignored before. Her perfume, stronger than usual, clinging in the air. A second pair of heels by the door, ones I hadn't seen her wear to work in months. A receipt on the counter from a boutique restaurant downtown. Not in her handwriting, but a man's scrawl across the tip line. My chest tightened. I picked it up, studied it. Dinner for two. Wine. Date and time from last week, one of the nights she said she stayed late at the office. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People go out with colleagues all the time. Clients. Friends. But the lie about Emily clung to me like smoke I couldn't wash off. When she came back that afternoon, she was glowing. Laughing as she told me some story about Emily's terrible date last night. She spoke fast, as if speed could cover the cracks. I smiled. I nodded. I even laughed in the right places. But inside, I was unraveling. Because I had the receipt in my pocket. And every word she said felt like a thread pulling looser, showing me the pattern I wasn't supposed to see. That night, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table long after she'd gone to bed, staring at the city lights flickering outside the window. My father's voice echoed in my head again, "Suspicion will eat you alive, son." Maybe it already was. But now, it wasn't just suspicion. It was evidence. And evidence demanded answers. I told myself I wouldn't do it. That I wasn't that kind of man, the kind who sneaks behind his wife's back, who digs through private things looking for ghosts. But ghosts had already moved into our home. It was late. Rachel had fallen asleep curled on her side, her breathing steady, soft. The glow of her phone charger lit up the nightstand faintly, the screen dark but waiting. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. My palms sweated, my heartbeat hammered. Every instinct told me not to cross that line. That once I did, nothing would ever be the same. But then I remembered the receipt. Emily's confused voice. The perfume, the lies stacked neatly on each other like cards waiting to collapse. I reached for the phone. Her fingerprint lock was set. But I'd watched her enough times, seen the passcode when she thought I wasn't paying attention. My fingers moved almost on their own, 0-7-2-9. Her birthday. The screen unlocked. And there it was, a floodgate I wished had stayed closed. Messages. Dozens of them. Not from Emily. Not from anyone I recognized. Just a contact saved as M. I opened one at random. M, last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. My stomach dropped. Another. Rachel. You're trouble, you know that. But I can't stay away. I kept scrolling. Date after date. Words I'd once thought belonged only to us. Her laughter, her warmth, her affection, poured into someone else's hands. It felt like reading a play where I'd been cast out of the lead role, left to watch from the shadows. I put the phone down, chest tight, ears ringing. For a long moment, I just sat there in the dark, staring at her sleeping form. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the girl I once trusted without question. The betrayal cut deeper because of that face. I wanted to wake her. To shake her until she admitted everything. But instead, I slipped the phone back, careful, quiet. Because I realized I wasn't ready. Not yet. The next morning, she acted as if nothing was wrong. She made coffee, asked me about my plans, kissed me goodbye at the door. But I carried the weight of those messages in my chest, pressing heavier with every breath. And that was when another thought formed, sharp, cold, unstoppable. If I follow her, I'll know everything. It was a Wednesday, gray and bitterly cold, the kind of Chicago day where the wind cuts through even the thickest coat. Rachel left earlier than usual, saying she had an early meeting downtown. But I knew better now. I waited 10 minutes after she left, then grabbed my keys. My heart raced like I was about to commit a crime. In a way, I was. I parked a block away from the train station and watched. At 7:42 a.m., she appeared. Her hair carefully done, heels clicking against the wet pavement, a smile tugging at her lips, not the forced kind she gave me lately, but something lighter, freer. And then I saw him. Tall, maybe mid-30s, dark coat, confident stride. He moved toward her with the ease of someone who belonged in her orbit. Rachel's whole face changed when she saw him. She lit up, brighter than she'd smiled at me in months. He leaned in, kissed her cheek. Too close. Too familiar. They didn't notice me. Why would they? I was just another man in the city crowd. But my world tilted. They walked together toward Michigan Avenue, their shoulders brushing, their laughter carried by the wind. I followed at a distance, my breath sharp, fogging in the air. They slipped into a coffee shop on the corner, one we'd gone to countless times before. The place where we used to sit on rainy mornings, sharing a blueberry muffin, her hand resting on mine across the table. Now, she sat with him. Through the glass, I watched them. She leaned in, touched his wrist when she laughed, her eyes alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. He reached across, brushed a crumb from her lip like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach twisted. My fists clenched until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to storm in, to flip the table, to shout her lies into the air for everyone to hear. But I didn't. I stood there in the cold, drenched in a mix of rain and humiliation, and realized I wasn't ready, not yet. Because once I confronted her, there'd be no going back. So I turned, walked away, and carried the image of her laughter with him like a knife in my chest. That night, she came home humming. She told me about her meeting, about how exhausting the day had been. She poured herself a glass of wine, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and slipped into the shower. I sat at the table, staring at the condensation on her half-empty glass, and thought. I saw you. I know. And yet, I said nothing. Not tonight. But soon. Very soon. The tension had become unbearable. Every smile she gave me, every casual story about late meetings, or Emily's drama, they weren't just lies anymore. They were insults, thrown in my face while she believed I was too blind to see. I wasn't blind. I was burning. Friday night, she told me she'd be working late at the office. I nodded, pretending to believe her, my pulse steady only on the surface. As soon as she left, I grabbed my coat and followed. This time, I wasn't keeping my distance. I parked near her office building but stayed in the shadows across the street. At 8:15 p.m., when most of the offices were already dark, I saw her step out. Not alone. The man I'd seen before. He wasn't her coworker, I knew that now. He wasn't her friend. The way his hand slid to the small of her back, the way she leaned into him as if it were the most natural thing in the world, it confirmed everything. They walked together, laughing softly, then hailed a cab. I followed, heart pounding like I was chasing criminals instead of my own wife. The cab stopped outside a hotel downtown. A 4-star, glass-fronted, the kind of place we'd once saved for anniversaries. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands went numb, and watched them disappear through the revolving doors. The world went silent. Just my breath, ragged, broken. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Hours. My mind replayed every moment of our life together, the promises, the nights we held each other through storms, the times she swore I was her only one. All of it, ash. When they finally emerged, nearly 2 hours later, I stepped out of my car before I realized what I was doing. Rachel. Her name cut through the night like a blade. She froze, mid-laugh, her arm still looped through his. Her face drained of color. "Hey Alex," her voice faltered, thin and trembling. The man stiffened beside her, eyes narrowing. He wasn't afraid, he looked annoyed, like I was an interruption. "Who is he?" I asked, though my voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before something breaks. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just silence. Silence that screamed louder than any confession. My chest felt hollow. Empty and yet full of fire at the same time. I saw the messages. "I saw you with him." My voice cracked, raw. "How long, Rachel? How long have you been lying to me?" Her lips parted, tears filling her eyes. I can explain. But explanations meant nothing now. Because the truth was standing right in front of me, his arm still brushing hers, his gaze still daring me to do something. And I realized, there was no turning back. The life I thought we had ended in that moment, under the glow of the hotel's bright lights, with the city watching silently all around us. The city pulsed around us, but all I heard was the blood rushing in my ears. Rachel's face was pale, her eyes wet, but even her tears felt like lies. The man beside her, stood tall, smug, almost daring me to lose control.